I think that another piece to just to add in here is that if you're using a whey-based powder versus a vegan-based powder, I usually find that the vegan-based powders they would be thicker, and then the whey-based powders might be not as thick. What do you
Yes.
guys think about that?
Yeah, totally, 100%.
The event that somebody's using a whey-based powder and it's not that thickness, what would you say? And they've already added another extra scoop of protein. Would you add
Uh,
another banana?
I would not add another banana because the banana will ultimately turn into a liquid, and it'll add to the consistency initially, but when you apply heat to it, the enzymes of the banana will break down and then it'll be too runny again. And the sugars of the banana will caramelize quickly and then causing it to burn.
Yeah, a little bit of egg white if ours is too thick.
Yes. Well, actually, if it's a bit too thick, and with this, you'll notice that, I think I want it a little thinner than this consistency.
Okay.
So,
yeah, mine's thicker than that.
Yeah. So if it's thicker than that, we want to thin it out a little bit. So we're going to start with a teaspoon. So just a teaspoon of almond milk, okay? Because here's the thing about adding a liquid to it now. You can't take it back. So if you add too much now, the ratio is going to be extremely off. And you'll find that a little liquid, in fact, goes a long way. So a teaspoon doesn't seem like very much.
What's the difference between if I'm using regular milk as opposed to almond milk?
Almond milk has got totally different properties in terms of baking. With almond milk being nut based,
Yeah.
it'll cook slightly differently.
Okay. I just didn't buy any today because I wasn't really too sure. So.
Is it homogenized?
Yeah, it's 1%.
1%. So like
Yeah.
that's like a skim milk. Oh,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, yeah. That won't have any effect on the cooking.
That won't. Okay.
So as far as quantity goes, Rags, you're saying that still start with a teaspoon, basically.
Yes, definitely. Only yeah, a teaspoon for sure. Which a teaspoon is about 5 grams.
So I have a question. How do those Japanese pancakes that are like super fluffy, how does that happen? Is that something to do with the egg whites or the concentration of egg whites?
Absolutely. So the Japanese pancakes actually use the whole egg, but they are separated. So the egg yolks will go into part of the batter, and then the egg whites will get whipped in with sugar in order to form a meringue. And then you take the batter and then you slowly fold in that batter into the meringue. And then in the pan, you put a scoop. And then you let that set for a few seconds, and then you put in another scoop. You let that set for a few seconds, and then you put in another scoop. So then so what you're doing is you're basically layering it so that they get thick and fluffy. And we're gonna create a bit of fluffiness in our pancakes with a really simple cooking technique. So our pan should be hot. So we're gonna demonstrate what you would do for Japanese pancakes as well as these pancakes in order to make them a little fluffier. Okay?
That's great.
How do you avoid the blueberries from like burning while the batter is still?
You have to make sure the blueberries are well coated.
Funny, I actually mashed my blueberries once into the batter, and I had these bright purpley blue pancakes.
which is just as fantastic,
Now, Regs, could you put them into like your toaster like you can with other pancakes, and heat them up that way?
Yes, 100%.
Pardon? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, you said yeah.
If you don't have a timer, that's perfectly fine. Look for the bubbles.
Yeah. When you flip them as well.
Exactly.
Yep.
So
Okay.
when you flip it on the other side, you're looking at 2.5 to 3 minutes maximum.
Okay. So it's a little shorter when you flip them. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct. Because you've already put the lid on it,
Right.
a shell is already formed on the entire pancake. So
Okay,
thus,
yeah.
less time would be needed. You've already trapped all the heat in.
Right.
These pancakes.
The best toppings?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I was going to talk about that in the nutritional part, but you know, traditionally we use gobs and gobs of syrup, but because we have the banana and the blueberries, it's already sweet. A lot of times, believe it or not, when I get people to make them, or even when I make them, not as good as you make them, obviously, but I eat them just like that. Like, or I wait for the blueberries and put them on top and then eat them, or the vice versa with the bananas instead of cooking them in. Literally, if you think you need more sweetness, honestly, I like a drizzle, just a drizzle of honey or a drizzle of maple syrup. Not like it just needs a drizzle. It's not going to need a lot. Like if you guys probably taste your pancakes, they're probably, because the protein powder is going to make it sweet too, right? Especially if it's vanilla based or chocolate based, right? So
Yeah, this is chocolate.
that's why they're such a neat, awesome recipe, because you can eat them just like that. You can even put peanut butter on if you wanted to, natural peanut butter.
That's what I was gonna say. I like peanut butter on it.
And if
Yeah,
you want
same.
more protein or more creaminess, you can add cottage cheese on top.
Yeah, definitely. I love that too.
Cottage cheese, and then you can sprinkle some cinnamon or vanilla like extract for flavor. You can mash in some or sprinkle in some monk fruit or stevia into the cottage cheese. And then I would say top with fresh fruit for the natural sweetness.
Actually, I tasted them, and that's the first thing I thought. I brought out the maple syrup thinking we have to put maple syrup just out of habit. I wouldn't need anything more on these at all.
What was your question again, please?
Mine just stuck to the pan.
Okay. So when you're putting the oil in and melting the oil, the trick is the oil will go in, and the oil is hot. So the first thing you want to do is start with a hot pan with no oil in it.
Right.
Okay, so once the pan gets hot, put in the oil and then slowly rotate it around.
Okay.
And then use your spatula.
Yeah.
To just make sure that you cover everything.
Okay.
And when you do that, and remember you want to have the heat low, because it's going to be a little higher just to get the pan hot, and then lower it.
Okay.
And then when you lower it and then put the lid on, you're really creating convection. It's almost like having your pan on a medium heat when you put your lid on.
So maybe
and you're allowing, and because we've whisked it with a fork in order to get air into that pancake, like quite honestly, they shouldn't be this fluffy.
Okay.
As a normal recipe. But because we incorporate air, start off with a slightly higher heat and then turn it down and then put the lid on it in order to keep convection. What happens is that heat immediately hits it, and then it maintains that shape.
Okay.
And then when you put the lid on it, it's constantly rotating. It's almost like a convection oven inside that pan. And with that heat, it maintains that heat at the same temperature, almost no matter what.
Okay. So maybe mine were a little bit too thick still. Maybe that's what they were, because they were a little bit thicker. They were a little bit more like not as runny as used. Like I was able to use a fork with mine and put it into my pan where you use the ladle. So maybe that was all part and part of it. Maybe it was a little bit.
Yeah, it sounds like your batter was a little too thick. Yeah. So remember, take your almond milk or your whole milk, or I mean, the lower percentage the milk, the better, because you don't want the milk solids to caramelize and ultimately start to burn. So the less fat that's in that milk, the better. And then you're really only gonna take a teaspoon and put it in until you're able to ladle it. When you're able to ladle that dough, that batter is going to be so smooth.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Oils. What is the difference between like the cooking properties of like butter versus coconut oil versus olive oil, sunflower oil, all those? And then how much oil is just enough versus too much?
Sure. Excellent question. So let's take oils versus butters. So butters, as I mentioned earlier, in regards to like dairy product, there's the milk solids, and that milk solids ultimately start to burn. They've got a lower smoke. It's called smoke point, and that smoke point means that like things start to burn. So butter has got a much lower smoke point. So when that heat happens, the butter will melt quicker, and because it's got milk solids in it, that will start to burn, especially in the fat that's generated from the butter. So butter at the very end, fantastic. It's great for flavor and great for moisturizing things. That's why butter goes in at the very end when you're doing steak. You do your steak, you sear it, and then you put your butter in your pan, and you got your herbs and your garlic, and you're basting it, and that's in order to get the milk solids into the meat, in order to tenderize it, make it softer, and add flavor. If you put that butter in the beginning, it would burn. So as a recommendation, I would definitely never start with butter.
Well, there's part of my problem.
If you cook with coconut oil, does it, sorry for the question, does it actually taste like coconut?
It all depends on which coconut oil you get. I mean, as coconut oil, you could get what's known as a bleached and deodorized coconut oil. Bleached and deodorized also takes out a lot of the healthier properties of coconut oil. So if you use like an extra virgin coconut oil, which will carry more of those healthier properties, it will impart a bit of a coconut taste. Also know that once you apply heat to something, flavor gets taken away.
Okay.
So
I like coconut.
That you let the cooking do its work.
Mine crumbled, like literally crumbled. So, yeah, I put a lid on for both sides, but still cooking.
Maybe your batter must have been too thick, because here's my pancake.
Oh, okay.
But you use chocolate in yours, right, Rags?
Yes.
You use chocolate. So yours is going to be darker than what ours was. Yeah.
If you are using chocolate, like cocoa powder will in fact require more liquid.
Okay. See, I used vanilla, so mine was quite pale. So it didn't look anything like yours, but that's because you used chocolate. Yeah.
Yes. That's perfect. And for me, like, if you want to spice up the pancakes itself as well, feel free to add, like, especially with bananas, cinnamon and nutmeg are always a couple of really cool things to add in order to add a new dimension of flavor into your banana pancakes.
Would you just sprinkle them on, or is there a certain amount that you would add?
I would put in like a quarter, for the amount of batter, a quarter teaspoon of each into the batter, and then cook it.